Leica cameras suck. How many times have you heard that? They're overpriced. You're only paying for the name, blah, blah, blah. We've heard it 100 times. Today I'm going to talk about 4 reasons why people think Leica cameras suck and why they're wrong. My story. Okay, I started my YouTube channel 2020, October 2020. And remarkably, it was successful, and I do this for a living now. What had happened, though, prior to starting a YouTube channel was I took a lot of pictures. I took pictures of my family constantly. So basically, the entirety of my family's existence, as far as like the little ones go, there is documentation. A lot of it. A lot of it. Holidays, sports, activities, to the point where my family would get upset at me because I would constantly be taking pictures and they're like, please stop. And when my YouTube channel started taking off, I did stop. And I have an iPhone, and you know, occasionally it'll just pop up pictures, it'll put together a little slideshow of memories, and it's awesome. And it occurred to me, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago, that I wasn't taking pictures anymore. And I think the reason is because I use this stupid thing all of the time. And I have associated this right here with work, not with pleasure, and not with passion to a certain extent. I mean, I'm still passionate about making videos, but I ceased being passionate about taking photos. And there's a couple years missing of memories of my family that I'll never get back. But don't despair, this has a good ending. They're too expensive. Come on, this is what, $6,200, $6,000? This is the Leica Q3, the 28mm version, the OG Q3. And I bought this in Rome when I was on a press trip, which was awesome because I couldn't find them. And I knew I wanted a Leica, and we'll get into that kind of at the end. But I thought the price was just ridiculous. And I kind of chased this desire to get a stills only camera. I bought the Fuji, I think it was an X-T4. Hated it, hated it. I bought the Nikon ZF, which I loved, but they didn't have any cool lenses. This will be another video too. And recently I bought the Olympus, or not Olympus, the OM Systems OM3. Just came out with that camera, and it broke, so I sent it back. Anyway, people think that Leicas are too expensive. They are a lot more expensive. You can get a Sony A7 IV right here, a 24mm 1.4 G Master, a 85mm 1.4 G Master, and a 50mm 1.8, all for less than what I paid for the Leica Q3 43. That's right, I have 2 Leicas, which is kind of the reason why I even started this channel. Anyway, they are expensive, but they're a bit of an aspirational item too. If you're into watches, you may want to buy an Omega. If you're into cars, I don't know, you might want to buy the Scat Pack. If you're into cameras, you might want to buy a Leica. And that doesn't mean they're just a camera for dentists or they're just a camera for rich, snobby people. People make decisions all of the time financially, and they don't all live in mansions. Some of them live frugally, but they spend money on what they want, what their obsession is, what their passion is. Could be cars, could be watches, could be cameras. If somebody doesn't have a car payment because they drive around a 97 Civic, but they're saving $400 or $500 a month, that means at the end of the year, they can buy a Leica. So I think it's super lazy when people say, oh, this is a dentist camera. I could never afford this camera. You could if you made different choices. And I guess I'm not gonna really defend the price of these cameras because I don't think they really exist as direct competitors to Sony, Fuji, Nikon, Canon, because they're not even trying to compete. And I know they're not trying to compete because the autofocus kind of sucks. Okay, to be fair, it's better than Fuji. Way better than Fuji, at least the Fuji that I have. And in seeing a bunch of videos up there, I think Fujis that still exist today. Like, I cannot believe how bad the Fuji autofocusing was. And I couldn't believe nobody was really talking about it. And especially if you're coming from a Sony or a recent Canon or even the recent Nikon, the ZF autofocused really well. It's not gonna compete. I don't think they care. I don't think Leica cares either. But I also think that it doesn't matter. And the reason why it doesn't matter is because yesterday I was at my daughter's softball game. I was in the stands and I was shooting through the chain link fence and I was trying to use autofocus. She was on third. She was getting ready to come home and score. Well, obviously I wanted to get a picture of her crossing home plate because that's cool. Anyway, I couldn't really get it to autofocus on her at third. So I started manual focusing and then I got her lined up because I use focus peaking. And then I thought, ooh, this is an excellent opportunity to learn how to zone focus. I've messed around with zone focusing in the house and stuff, but I'd never done it out in the real world, in the crazy world of 12U softball. So I got the minimum focus on home plate. It was put it in f8, so minimum focus on home plate. And everything after that was in focus. So when she started rolling through it, I was able to crop in, get the framing just right, and just boom, boom, boom. And every one of those pictures was in focus. And had it had better autofocus, and I was relying on that, I would have missed those shots. I would have missed those shots even if I would have had my Sony. Well, maybe. I could have maybe done tracking, but I was sitting so far back. The point I'm trying to make is that because the autofocus is not on the same level as Sony or Nikon or Canon, it's actually made me a better photographer. It's actually made me develop my skills a little bit more. And I never would have done that had the autofocus just been killer. And this lens, I don't think it's focused by wire because it's just so yummy, damped, whatever you want to call it. But because it's so good, I have learned how to be a better photographer. I just said that. I've also learned that this is a bridge to the M system in Leica, which right now is a bridge too far, but it's probably a bridge I will cross someday. You can't change lenses on a $6,800 camera. That's dumb. I think you could change lenses, but you'll only do it once. You could probably remove the lens, but you could only do it once. As I said before, you get a Sony 24mm 1.4, 85 1.4, 50mm, whatever it is, right? So you could be back there and have a variety of different lenses to choose from. And maybe you get better pictures. I would argue you won't get better pictures because you're going to be worried about what focal length should I be using. The great thing about having only a 28 or only a 43 is that I am forced to become, again, a better photographer because now I'm worried about composition. Now I'm worried about when is my subject going to be in frame if I'm cropped in? When is the perfect time to snap the photo? Push the thing down. And I think it's hilarious because there's a guy there yesterday at the game and he had this 70-200, right? Giant setup. And he was like all getting in there. And I'm not making fun of him because that was me. That was me 5-6 years ago. I showed up to the game, to 12U softball game with a 70-200, just cranking away. I was shooting the Rangers or something. And I remember when I was doing that I was worried more about taking pictures than I was focusing on the game. And yesterday it occurred to me that I was watching the game more than shooting pictures and that I was freed up to get better pictures because I didn't have to worry about focal lengths and I didn't have to worry about focusing anymore because I was zone focusing. It's been a bit of a paradox with me because I have fewer choices. I'm actually more free to capture better photos, if that makes sense. By the way, I was at two soccer games, one softball game, and then my youngest had a cheer, and that's where I got this wonderful sunburn, which I'm very angry about because I don't like the summer. I hate the summer. And yesterday, it was undeniable that even though it's still spring, it's now basically the first day that I get sunburnt, that's summer for me. And I'm not excited about it. All right, it doesn't have the functionality. And I actually figured this out a little while ago, and it did bug me a little bit. Because on all my other cameras, I'm able to change ISO in 1/3 stop increments. On the Q cameras, it goes 200, 400, 800, 1600. So I can't change the ISO in 1/3 stop increments until I figured out, well, I can change shutter speed in 1/3 stop increments, which again, made me a better photographer. If you've looked into any other camera company's menus though, it's a labyrinth of frustration. Some are better than others. Sony has gotten marginally better. Olympus, terrible. Nikon is absolutely the worst. Fuji, I don't really remember. I do remember it being kind of not fun. But the lack of functionality has, again, been a bit of a freeing, transformative experience. We have this dryer, right? So we got this new dryer. Has all these different options. You can do all that. You can hook it up to Wi-Fi. Why? I have no idea. And a lot of times when I've made decisions in the past, I see all these features and I get excited, but I never consider that I'm never going to use these features. And this Sony can do all sorts of stuff, but I really only used like 5 different things. And once I got it set up, I never really changed anything. I use focus peaking. I use the eye autofocus. Occasionally I'll use tracking if I'm shooting some B-roll, but generally speaking, I'm just using a DJI, but most recently, I'm using my Leicas for B-roll. And again, it makes me a better photographer. I was talking to a buddy of mine after I got this camera, and I told him this camera is like cheating, especially in video with the eye autofocus. So having a lack of features has again made me a better photographer. And I don't think it's wrong to leverage technology to be a better photographer or a better videographer or whatever it is. So I don't disparage anybody for leaning into technology. But I think the point I'm trying to make is that anybody can pick up a Sony a7 IV and just slay it with the number of shots they get in focus. And not having to develop those skills as far as composition, as far as zone focusing, which I never knew how to do, it holds me back in my development as a photographer. To sum this whole thing up, I have become a bit of a Leica fanboy. There's a cool community surrounding Leica. I think Fuji has a similar one too, but it's not like anybody's like, hey, let's all get together and talk about Sony cameras or anything. People will talk about Leica cameras all day long, and you get compliments on the street. Nice camera, man. No one's ever said nice camera, nice Sony camera, man. But bringing this full circle, what the Leica did was fill that void that I had that was not taking pleasure in taking photos. Now I love taking photos. I bring my Leica with me just about everywhere I go. And I am back to documenting and freezing memories in time of my life, because I forget things, right? Even stuff that I was talking to my wife the other day. We were talking about one of the vacations. I'm like, I don't remember that. I tried to get the photo passion back with Fuji. I tried with Nikon, but nothing has done what the Leica has done. And maybe it is all just hype and the name, whatever it is. I feel better about taking pictures, but doesn't matter. I mean, the end result is I'm able to grab a camera. I'm not worried about grabbing a bunch of lenses. I'm not worried about all the different features and says, should I be using tracking? Should I be doing this? Should I be doing that? No, man, I'm just grabbing the camera and I'm going out and I'm taking pictures. And I'm also not worried about editing, because I would take a bunch of pictures and then I have to dump them into Lightroom and then I have to edit them just right. But the JPEGs in these things and the different profiles is just amazing. And the app is really good. So now I'm sharing more pictures more quickly with my family or whomever. Because now I have a tool that does most of the work for me, and I enjoy it. I enjoy how it feels. I enjoy how it makes me feel. But most importantly, I enjoy that I'm not gonna miss my kids growing up anymore. That's why Leica doesn't suck.